Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I congratulate the honourable member for North Ayrshire and Arran for securing this debate and the Backbench Business Committee for granting it. The purpose of the debate is to consider the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman's report of 21st March and how best to implement its recommendations. In brief, the following issues arise from the report. Firstly, the PHSO found that in 2005, the Department of Work and Pensions failed to take adequate account of the need for targeted and individually tailored information to be shared with women affected by the changes to the state pension age. This amounted to maladministration and resulted in the 6 complainants whose cases were considered not being able to do things differently and to make informed mitigating decisions. The PHSO concluded that they should be compensated for this. Secondly, the PHSO took the highly unusual step of laying their report before Parliament due to their concerns that the DWP would fail to provide a remedy. Whilst the PHSO have put forward a suggestion as to what this compensation should be, they have asked Parliament to intervene, to agree a mechanism for remedy and to hold government to account. Thirdly and finally, the PHSO point out that it is extremely rare for an organisation that they investigate not to accept and act on their recommendations. They make the observation that a failure to comply with the Ombudsman's recommendations represents a constitutional gap in protecting citizens' rights who have been failed by a public body and ensuring access to justice. Mr Deputy Speaker, my interest in this injustice arises from the fact that for approximately 8 years, as regular as clockwork, constituents have been highlighting to me the enormous challenges and hardship they have faced and endured. For the past 4 years, I have had the privilege of co-chairing the APPG on state pension inequality for women, firstly with the honourable member for Denton and Reddish, and more recently with the honourable member for Salford and Eccles. I also take this opportunity to thank our predecessors, the honourable member for Swansea East, and my honourable friend, the member for East Worthing and Shoreham. Mr Deputy Speaker, it is important to thank the PHSO for the work that they have done and the duty which they have carried out. They have received criticism, both for the time that they have taken and the narrow remit of considering 6 cases, which some are concerned do not fully reflect the injustice that 1950s-born women as a whole have had to endure. However, it would have been very easy for the PHSO to have decided that this was not a case for them to investigate. Instead, they have not shied away from the task. It has taken a long time because it is complicated, and there was a need also to get it right. Mr Deputy Speaker, what the PHSO have done is to provide us with a snapshot. It is up to us, Parliament, Government and the DWP, to extrapolate and to put right a problem that may well extend much wider. To do this, the PHSO have provided some guidelines which we need to follow. Parliament should take immediate steps to find a resolution for those for whom time is not on their side. Each case should be considered on its merits. Finite resources are not an excuse for failing to provide a fair remedy. If Parliament chooses to do nothing, that will undermine the Ombudsman. The Department of Work and Pensions should respect what Parliament recommends. There must be a commitment from government to take on board the PHSO's findings and to work collegiately with Parliament in finding and then implementing a fair and just remedy. Mr. New Deputy Speaker, there is a wider issue that does need to be considered, and in the first instance, there may well be a case for the Right Honourable Member for East Ham and his Select Committee. This is the breakdown in communication and implementation of policy in the DWP going back over 30 years. I accept that their remit is a large and challenging and complicated one, but the PHSO highlight repeated failures in the Department's communication of state pension reform.
I want to be on that very point.
I will give you...
I'm extremely grateful to Aldous going away, but we mustn't let cause become more important than effect. It is right, as he describes, that we look at why this happened and how it happened, but what really matters is what happened, because what the WASPy women need is action quickly. And if we were to spend a great deal of time looking at the genesis of this, I'm not sure that quick action would be delivered. And so I endorse what the member from East Ham said, to establish criteria that could be affected with reasonable speed.
I thank my honourable friend for that point, and he makes it quite well. I am diverting slightly from the main cause and theme, which I sense he and I are on the same page. As I said, there are my concern about repeated failures in the Department's communications. Mr. Deputy Speaker, only last Saturday, a constituent was highlighting to me how the introduction of the new state pension penalises those women born in 1951 and 1952. And the End Frozen Pensions campaign, they point out that for 85% of frozen pensioners did not know of the policy's existence prior to moving abroad. Very quickly, it is a sideshow. But
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. The report actually does acknowledge that the DWP are now modernising their system so people are informed in that way. But isn't there then also a risk specifically for pensioners who may be digitally excluded because of this movement to a modernised system, that again something like this could happen in the future?
I thank the honourable friend for that point, and she makes a good point. It is a side point to the main point, but nevertheless, the PHSO have pinpointed this, and these are debates for another day, and I suspect it is for my right honourable member for East Ham and his committee to look at in more detail. But I think the PHSO have shone a spotlight on a wider problem. The aims of the APPG, which I co-chair with the honourable member for Salford and Eccles, are threefold. Firstly, to represent those women who have been treated unjustly by the short notice changes to the state pension age. According to WASPy, 280,000 have now died since the start of their campaign. Secondly, to develop and promote policy solutions to support 1950s-born women and their families who do not have access to their pension and are facing mental and physical health consequences. And thirdly, to feed the views and experiences of 1950s-born women into future policy decisions relating to the state pension and welfare. Over the years, we have had regular evidence-gathering sessions with the various representative groups, and we have considered policies and initiatives as to how best to help and assist them. In January 2022, the APPG made their own submission to the PHSO as to the level of compensation that should be provided. I would like to give special thanks to the Honourable Member for Denton and Reddish for the work that he and his office did in putting this together. Based on the evidence that had been presented to us from right across the UK, we reached what for us was the logical conclusion that level 6 of the PHSO's compensation scale should apply. We did subsequently refine this recommendation by proposing that compensation should be provided in a bell curve with those who received least notice of the longest postponement receiving the most, and those who received the longer notice of a shorter increase receiving lesser sums. I will give.
May I take the opportunity to thank my honourable friend for his key role in the APPG, and also to put on record the dignified and well-informed views of local coordinators of WASPI in my part of the world, Sheila Simmons and Sal Robinson. But may I ask him, we heard earlier an intervention which was saying about judging each case on its individual circumstances. Now, I can see the merit of that, but I can also see that that would have a devastating effect on the speed with which we would come to conclusions. What's the balance that he thinks should be struck on those two factors?
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, and hopefully I will. My sense is that there is a need to strike a balance. That is what the PHSO themselves say. My sense is that in the work that the APPG are doing, in the work that the Select Committee are doing, a way forward is beginning to emerge, and I will elaborate on that. Now, since the PHSO published their report on 21st March, the APPG have been seeking to play our role as part of Parliament in finding as quickly as possible a fair and just mechanism, as the PHSO asked Parliament to do. The Honourable Member for Salford and Eccles and myself wrote to my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and we have subsequently met my honourable friend, the Minister, who is now back in his place, and I thank him for the hearing that he gave us. Last Tuesday, we both appeared before the Work and Pensions Select Committee, and likewise I am grateful to the Right Honourable Member for East Ham and his colleagues for the fair and full reception that they provided. We are also holding our own evidence sessions with the various representative groups. The first 3 of these took place on Monday, and more are to follow. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is a complicated matter, and whilst the APPG is yet to reach a settled and final recommendation as to the form that a compensation mechanism should take, I think that it is fair to say that ideas are fast evolving and are pointing in a particular direction. I'll give way.
I wonder if you can advise the House about those recommendations to WASPI women in Western Berkshire and across the UK, if one of those recommendations will be for a ministerial apology on behalf of the department for where we are now.
Hear, hear.
I thank the Honourable Member for that intervention. What I would say, if you look at what the PHSO say, and what way forward should be, that encapsulates an apology included, is part of what the DWP should be coming up with. If you look at the DWP's own guidelines, they include an apology as well in such instances. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I shall focus on the issue of the form of compensation redress that is emerging in a little more detail. Whilst the PHSO have suggested compensation should be paid at level 4 on their scale, there is disquiet among those affected that this is too low, and level 6 should apply in line with the APPG's recommendation. The PHSO comment that a flat rate is easiest to implement, but it is not perfect, and there may well be a need for a balancing act, as indeed my right honourable friend to my side suggested in his intervention a few minutes ago. They also suggest that the National Audit Office may be able to provide guidance as to how to structure a compensation scheme. The WASPI Group have emphasised, as we've heard, the need for speed, simplicity and sensitivity, and they recommend that the DWP bring forward proposals of a financial redress scheme to Parliament before the summer recess. They also propose that higher payments should be targeted at those most impacted. The Select Committee are to be commended for getting out their recommendations less than 10 days after their evidence session. They also asked the government to bring forward proposals for the summer recess. They too propose that payments should be based on the extent of change to an individual's state pension age and the notice of change that they received. They add that there should be some flexibility for individuals to be able to make the case for a higher level of compensation based on experiencing direct financial loss. Mr. Deputy Speaker, clear parameters as to the form of that compensation to take, I sense, are rapidly evolving. Parliament, in the past 2 months, since the PHSO published their report, in its various different guises, is playing its role to the full. I would suggest that now is the time for government to very much step up to the plate. A mechanism should be put in place before the summer recess. I acknowledge that the matter is complicated and there is need for contemplation and reflection. But we should have in mind that the most notable achievement, I would suggest, of this government is that under enormous pressure, in a very short timescale, they put in place the furlough scheme, which saved hundreds of thousands of jobs and got us through COVID. There is no reason, Mr. Deputy Speaker, why government cannot move with such speed and alacrity again. I would add that failure to do so, not to comply with the PHSO's recommendations, would be almost completely unprecedented over the 70 years that the Ombudsman has existed, and would drive a coach and horses through what is an integral part of our parliamentary system of democratic checks and balances. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I support this motion.